the intent of the company, what we're focused on is developing magnet and heavy rare earth supply for Western end users. So if we move on through our disclaimer, the company's looking at an integrated vision, integrated into the life cycle of rare earths. So we have a large ionic adsorption clay deposit in Uganda, the Makuutu Rare Earths Project. We presently own 60% of the asset. We're working through a mining license application process now. Being an ionic adsorption clay, it's a low capital development, near surface, produces a value-added product, a mixed rare earth carbonate rich in both magnet and heavy rare earths with no radionuclides. It's scalable, and we've got a lot of exploration upside. Because of the type of product and the nature of the dominance that China has on the supply chain, we've been looking at a downstream a refinery to separate and refine our individual magnet rare earths into the oxides that can be then deployed into metal making, alloy making, magnet making. We've identified a strategy into the US and working on a scoping study, which we're hoping to complete shortly. And then the third aspect of the company is magnet recycling. So recycling end-of-life permanent magnets, and we're building a demonstration plant at the moment in the UK. Commercialising that, we expect the ability to roll that out and completing the circular economy of rare earths, which we see as being very important now to a number of stakeholders. Moving on, just a quick snapshot of the corporate snapshot of the company. Roughly market cap's around 103 million. And at the end of December, we had nearly 20 million in the bank. Moving on. So that's the nature of the supply chains that exist today, completely dominated by China. And what we're trying to do is provide an alternative on both magnet and heavy rare earths to Western supply chains, which are trying to form at the moment. So with regards to the Makuutu asset and potentially refinery in the US, we can start to provide some alternative options for some stakeholders who are keen to explore decoupling from dependence on China. But realistically, there's still tremendous investment that needs to happen on metal making and magnet manufacturing. And then the third aspect of the company, recycling, is an area that's completely dominated by China. And we think that we're in a position to provide, again, some optionality for partners there. Moving on. One of the biggest tailwinds that we're the beneficiary of at the moment is the geopolitical demand to decouple from China. So very strong support from both the stakeholders within the US and the European Commission on helping to facilitate access and supply of both magnet and heavy rare earths for these supply chains. Further moving on, with the recent European Critical Raw Material Act, again, we're in a very unique position where we produce, or we will produce, both magnet and heavy rare earths, which fall under this new strategic raw material classification. And so demand is growing on mining, processing of our product, but importantly also the recycling opportunity. So again, the groundswell of support for the offering from the company is in a very good place. If we move on, this is the greater supply chain, the roles that we think we can play within Ionic Rare Earths, the roles that other participants in magnet supply chains will need to bring to operation. And we're engaging with several groups now on metal making and alloy making and magnet making, so that we can be part of those new supply chains that are forming now. Moving on. So now just to explore a little bit more about Makuutu itself. So we've recently completed our stage 1 DFS. We've received tremendous support from the Ugandan government, where we've got flagship project status and working now through the final stages of the mining license application. So if we move on, the recently announced results of our stage 1 feasibility study indicated for the first of 6 tenements, we've got a 35-year life. So it's a very large near surface development, capital development of 120 million. It's got a very robust internal rate of return and producing a product that's rich in both magnet and heavy rare earths. So with that kind of product, we have had significant interest from end users across both North America and Europe, looking to get access to our product to go into these new supply chains. If we move on, the project location itself. So we're in Uganda, about 1,000 kilometres from the port of Mombasa. The project site itself stretches across 37 kilometres long. We're near the mouth of the Nile, Jinja, which is approximately 120 kilometres from Kampala. Available infrastructure is extremely good, and that's going to support the low capital development of Makuutu. So if we move on, just a quick snapshot of the mineralisation. The resource and the mining licence application focuses on that red central area. We have 6 other tenements, and progressively each of those tenements will move towards their own individual mining licence applications. So we've got a large resource, potential to double that again with an exploration target that's currently defined. If we look at sort of the eastern tenements and northwest tenements, they are highly prospective for additional mineralisation. And so hopefully later this year we'll be in the position to deploy drilling to define how much larger the project has the potential to become. We move on. Just to cover off a little bit on magnet recycling and what we're doing in Belfast. So recently, September last year, we got a grant from the government, the UK government, of £1.7 million. We acquired this technology out of Queen's University, Belfast, and we're in the process of building a demonstration plant now. If we move on to the next slide, we've already been through the process of running pilot plants and making high purity oxides. We've set up a facility now that hosts the pilot plant, analytical facilities and hydrometallurgical labs, and now in the process of building our demonstration plant and commissioning that plant with a view to recycling 30 tonnes of magnets, producing 10 tonnes of oxides, which we'll then be able to use on building those supply chain relationships. So we're about to enter a very exciting phase for what's coming with Ionic Technologies. Moving on, the activity over the last few years, it's been a steady progress towards de-risking Makuutu. We've added capability on magnet recycling, and if we look to 2023 and near-term sort of benefits, we're going to finalise our mining licence application and the award of the mining licence, which we expect is going to come through in the second quarter of this year. We are in discussions with our partners on increasing the ownership of Makuutu, and we've publicly committed now and started work on our demonstration plant. So that demonstration plant at Makuutu will enable us to produce the mixed rare earth carbonate product that we can take into these supply chain discussions that are underway now. And so, a very exciting phase of development at Makuutu as we work towards de-risking Makuutu ahead of a final investment decision, which we're hoping to complete later this year. On the magnet recycling, we'll be a producer of magnet rare earths by the end of the second quarter this year, which again is a big milestone for the company. We're working on that scoping study. We've got a preferred location selected in the US and working with groups on what that look like, along with stakeholders at government level. And beyond that, as we define and develop and bring Makuutu to production and completion of the feasibility study, we've had a lot more interest and appetite on the individual basket and how that can be deployed in these new supply chains. If we move on to the next slide, I suppose this is where we see Ionic at the moment. We've completed our feasibility study, and with the milestones that we expect to come online shortly, we do expect that we start to move into a phase of growth. And it's very exciting for the company. We've worked through a lot of work over the last 4 years to be in a position to develop Makuutu into production. And so very exciting phase as the company moves from explorer now to developer, and shortly in the UK, a producer of magnet rare earths. We move on. If we just look at a high level value proposition of Ionic, it's a large, Makuutu itself is a very large deposit. it will get larger, and it's going to produce those magnet and heavy rare earths that are very difficult to source in other rare earth deposits. Low capital development and the ability to produce those materials that will underpin net zero carbon initiatives globally. So it's a very strategic asset, and with those geopolitical tensions, a very strong wind at our back. We are looking, and we're zeroing in on the opportunity to further extract value from the project and the product through further refining and relationships on bringing that product into supply chains that are emerging. And with the magnet recycling exposure, we see an ability to move very quickly on global deployment. And so we've got several things on the cards there. And that's effectively a very quick overview of Ionic Rare Earths. And over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Bang on time. We always appreciate that. You've spoken about, for those investors who don't know the company, you spoke about 60% ownership of your Makuutu project and potentially the ability to buy some more. Who owns the other 40%?
Yeah, so partners in Renzori Rare Metals, South African and Ugandan groups who've been effectively involved in this project all the way back to, it was initially discovered back in 2011. So long-term stakeholders that have been involved in taking the project as far as they could. That created an opportunity for Ionic to come in mid-2019, and we've been working through a program to expedite Makuutu into production, support mining license applications, and put us in the position now where we're at the front edge of discussions now of being a key participant in supplying heavy rare earths to Western end users.
And obviously your relationship with the Ugandan government, and particularly the kind of Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, is kind of critical to the success. How's your engagement with the Ugandan government been, and how's that progressing?
So, we acquired our initial interest in the project at the start of COVID, and through COVID, it facilitated our requirement to spend more money on Ugandan capability. We built very good relationships with both government departments, stakeholders within the Ugandan government, where they're buying in. They're buying into what it is we're doing and the opportunity that Makuutu represents to help build a mining industry in Uganda. So tremendous support, stakeholder engagement, environmental permits are all being approved in Uganda, and we expect the mining license to be awarded in this quarter.
That was my next question. You've stolen my thunder. So in regards to the demonstration plant, the commissioning of that's underway. When can we expect to see some first sort of test production?
So we've got two demonstration plants. So one at Makuutu, where we're in construction now of a phased approach to make mixed rare earth carbonate for end users. So our anticipated production of product, we expect to have product in the third quarter of this year, and start large-scale production for downstream users later this year. In Belfast, we're in commissioning now for our demonstration plant on magnet recycling. We expect we'll have oxides, high purity magnet rare earth oxides by the end of this quarter again, and we're in discussions now with potential supply chain partners on converting those oxides now to metals, alloys, and magnets. So it's a very exciting time for the company.
And a couple more, Tim, if you don't mind. Any updates on the scoping study for refinery in the USA?
Yeah, so we're now in possession of a lot of really strategic information about the value and I suppose opportunity for Ionic with our own standalone refinery. We've got a preferred site located. We're finalising the study itself. We've got some final test work which is being completed, and then we'll take that information internally and work out how we can best leverage that information to Ionic's advantage as we progress discussions on potentially a US facility. There's still a little bit of work to be done around that. I think we're in a pretty good position though to understand how much value and upside is in this space. I think the other thing is that we've been doing a lot of work in this sector, which a lot of our peers have been able to leverage off, which to some degree diminishes our strategic advantage. So we'll review what we make public when we make it public to maximise its benefit to the company.
And just finally, Tim, there's a question on your financing options. Obviously, there's strong tailwinds globally from governments. There's a lot of funding from governments. Where does kind of Uganda fit in that picture potentially for kind of funding options?
Yeah, look, so I think what should be understood is that, there is tremendous investment that occurs in Uganda at the moment. I think, numbers we've had quoted from key stakeholders within the US government is there's around about $1 billion worth of aid investment that goes into Uganda from the US. And with regards to the European Commission, they've identified Uganda as one of the 6 countries where they'd like to prioritise investment in Africa. So we are in a very good spot with some strategic end users who are desperate to get access to the product, and the appetite to invest in Uganda is already there. It's just a matter of de-risking the project to support final investment decision.
Tim, thanks. That's all we have time for. Thanks for your time. We'll follow with interest and get you back on later in the year.
Thank you, Tim.